everyone, Sylvie here. I am going to be teaching you soldering a jump ring to the end of the chain. So this is often used when the chain is too small to fit a jump ring through, or you don't like the look of it, or you want to link a smaller jump ring to a clasp or a larger jump ring. Something like that is when you might want to solder the jump ring directly to the end of the chain. So the chain that I'm going to be using today is 21020DD. And this is a very tiny drawn cable chain. And I'm just going to be turning it into a simple necklace. So I want to solder a tiny jump ring to the end. So what I'm doing is I'm just gently, first I'm going to flex my chain before I lay it out because I don't want to mess up what I've spent time laying out. All I need to do is flex just the end of it. And I'm just going to drag my chain across my board so that it's nice and straight. All right. And I'm also going to be using SJ63 as my jump ring. And it's a super tiny jump ring because I've got a super tiny chain. So I want to keep them nice and proportionate to each other. And the first thing that I'm going to be doing is closing that jump ring up with my pliers. If you wanted to, you could buy a jump ring that is already closed. But I had these on hand, so I'm going to be using an open jump ring. And I'm going to place that right up next to my chain. And there are kind of two ways that you can do this. You can put the open part of your jump ring right at your chain, and therefore when you solder the chain to the jump ring, you're also soldering the jump ring closed, so you're killing two birds with one stone if you don't want an open jump ring. If you're looking to link that jump ring to something else, say a lobster clasp or a spring ring, you can flip it around and have the open seam away from the chain so that you can still open it up, link on whatever you need to link, and then you would use the method that we just learned of using our third arm to solder that jump ring shut. So my chain is fluxed and I'm going to flux my little jump ring here. And it's with this one that my tiny tweezers really come in handy because everything that I'm working with is so small that if I tried to nudge things over with my fingers, it would just mess everything up. So I've got my nice little tweezers so that I can do all of the nudging with those. All right, so I've placed my jump ring right next to my chain. They're touching. That's really important. You want to make sure that they're touching, otherwise your solder isn't going to link them together. And there are two ways that you can do this. You can take a slightly larger piece of chip solder and place it right underneath so that when you gently heat it up, the solder will rise up to the jump ring and the chain connecting them. Or you can come in with your pick and just gently hold it right at the top and have it flow that way. That's the method I'm going to use because I like having the flexibility of being able to move. Sometimes when there's still moisture in your flux and things bubble, things move a little bit. So this just gives me a little bit more control. And with this method especially, you really want to make sure that you're using a very little amount of solder and a really tiny flame since there is no heat sink protecting your chain. So I've got my solder pick, my solder's over here. I'm still using easy solder because of the low melting temperature, and I'm gonna get my torch lit up. And now I'm gonna make this a really tiny flame because I'm working even smaller than I was before. Come over here, grab my tiny piece of solder, and I'm going to gently heat and I'm going to hold my piece of solder right over that joint, and when I come in with the flame, I don't need to place the solder. I'm going to hold them all at once, and the heat will just draw that solder right down, and then I can pull my pick away. So let's do that. Oops, my solder fell off my pick, and that's why I always have extra solder, so that when one falls off, I've got another waiting. All right, so I saw my solder drop. I'm just gonna make sure it's on my chain. And that's it. Everything with chain and soldering finishing happens super fast because everything is super tiny. So I'm gonna pop this guy off. I'll quench it, pickle it, and I'll show it to you when it's all finished. All right, so I've pulled that out of the pickle and I've got it here on my block so that you can see it nice and up close. And you can see that my jump ring is soldered right to my chain where my seam was. And now if I wanted to finish off this chain, I would do the exact same thing to the other side. And then I can turn it into whatever I want. I can add a clasp, quality tag, a larger jump ring, whatever I may need. The main thing to remember is a small amount of heat and a small amount of solder. And just remembering those two things are going to be your best friend when finishing off any end chain. So you'll be less at risk of melting your chain and flowing solder down the length of the chain and soldering your links together. Until next time.